Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at our old friend Nun lob mein Ziel den Herren, which translates to Now Praise My Soul the Lord. This is a pretty hefty chorale. It's in 3/4, so there's a lot of real estate measure-wise, so we do have a lot of ground to cover. It's a relatively long form, and we've looked at this melody 2 or 3 times in the past. I feel like I've encountered this melody more recently, at least in the last couple of weeks, because I've definitely seen this title before. We have 2 sharps in the key signature. We start on D major and we end on D major, as you can see right here, so I reckon we are in the key of D major. And we start off with a tonic triad with a passing 7th in the bass. And then we immediately have something actually to note is that we get some really interesting chord progressions going on here that I wouldn't say are the most normative. I'd say that there's nothing wrong with them tonally, but it definitely challenges what I would expect a particular progression to be. But most of the time it's occurring in D major. Otherwise the harmony is functioning more or less normally. But we do go to a B minor triad, B, F sharp, B, and D, which is a 6 chord in the key of D major. And then we have F sharp, A, and D, which is a D major triad in first inversion. So we have a 1-6. So 1 going to 6 going to 1, very modal. And here we have F sharp, A, and C sharp. That's an F sharp minor triad. That's a 3 chord. And this is what I'm talking about with the non-normative progressions. 1 going to 3, in between 6. It's kind of unusual. We have a lot of F sharp and A, just a lot of F sharp in general. But yeah, afterwards we have G, D, A, and B. I reckon that this F sharp is actually what we're looking for right here, and this G is an accented non-chord tone. It's F sharp, D, A, and B, which is B minor 7 over F sharp, and that would be 6, 4, 3. Kind of an unusual progression. 3 going to, actually, no, they share a bass. That's pretty okay. 3 does want to go to 6 though, so I take that back. It is an okay progression. We then have E, G sharp, and B. That is a 2 chord in root position, E minor, the passing 7th and the tenor. And then we have F sharp, C sharp, A, and A with a passing tone in the alto. That is an F sharp minor triad in root position, another 3 chord. So 2 going to 3, that's kind of unusual. And then we have G, D, F sharp, and D. However, I think this G again this is a B. Apologies. I get my clefs confused when I switch between bass and treble clef as frequently as I do when doing these chorales. G, D, F sharp, and B. And we could call this a 4 chord. In fact, I think this is a 4 chord, or more specifically a 4/7 chord. So we have some adjacent harmonies here, 2, 3, 4 in ascending order, with a passing 7th, just a passing tone in the bass. This is not the root of the chord. Wait, how is that a 4/7 chord? There's no G. Apologies. Oop, that's too much eraser. So we have B, D, F sharp, and D. So 3 going to 6 again. If I knew any better, I would think we were in the key of B minor, even though we don't have the A sharp. But we have a lot of 6 being emphasized here. It's like we have the makings of a D major triad without the bass to justify it. But we have 3 going to 6 again. Then we have a passing 7th in the bass, that's right. Then we have G, D, B, and E. That's an E minor 7 chord over G. That's 2-6-5. Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. We then have A, C sharp, A, and E. That is a root position A major triad, or a 5 chord. The first time we're seeing a 5 chord in the phrase, which is interesting. And then we cadence on 1, our tonic triad in root position. And this is an imperfect authentic cadence because we have F sharp in the melody rather than D. And if we look ahead to the next phrase, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of D major, so no need to analyze. So we have another D major triad on beat 3, and then we get the bass leaping up an octave, but we have the same triad otherwise, so we have 2 D major triads in a row, neighbor tone in the melody, and then we have, it actually continues into the next beat as well. The C is a delayed passing tone, or like a suspension, I guess, as well. Like a 5/6 suspension maybe under the alto. But then we have B, C sharp, C sharp, and F sharp, but I reckon it's this A sharp that we're looking at here. This A sharp would make this an F sharp major triad over A sharp. That's 5/6 of 6, B being our 6. And then we have B, D, F sharp, and F sharp. That is our 6th chord in root position, B minor, passing 7th in the bass. We have G, D, B, and F. Depending on how we look at this, you could call this a 4 chord, right? G, B, D, G, D, B, and F. That would be a 4/7 chord. But if we look at this G as an accented non-chord tone, we might get something else. We get F sharp, D, B, and F sharp, so that would be like a 6 chord again, but in second inversion. No, I reckon that this is a 4 chord. We then have G, C sharp, E, and E. That would be C sharp diminished, which would be a 7 chord, and that's where 4 wants to go. This would be 7/6/4. I'm going to call this 7/6 because really I think this E is what's doing the carrying here. This G is a chord tone, but I think it's 7/6. So I'll go ahead and circle that E to make it known that it's a chord tone, but this G natural is also a chord tone, but I think the E is our bass here. Then we have F sharp, D, A, and D. That is a tonic triad, D major in first inversion. Anticipation in the melody. We then have G, D, B, and E. Another E minor 7 chord over G. That's 2/6/5. Bach loves his 2/6/5s. We then have A, C sharp, A, and E. That's a 5 chord, A major in root position, and then we cadence on 1, D major. Alright, looking ahead to the next melody, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of B minor. And I don't think we modulate for a while. I don't think we modulate until we see the A sharps. And I think it happens in and around here. We really have no reason to believe that we've modulated before the sharp. It often happens that way, where we get the preparation for the modulation beforehand, but this chromatic bass line that goes from A to A sharp to B, it doesn't really feel like it's modulated until we've heard the B, at least to me. And then we have, so first chord in the phrase, F sharp, D, A, and D. That's a D major triad in first inversion. We then have G, G, B, and D. It's a root position G major triad. Neighbor tone in the bass. G, C sharp, A, and E. That is A7 over G, which is 5/4/2. Passing tone in the bass. We would expect this to go to a 1/4/6, but this double passing tone figure is really interesting. Next chord we have is E, D, A, and F sharp, but I reckon this D right here is actually the target of our modulation, or sorry, it is not the target of our modulation, it's the chord tone that we're looking at. So we have a tonic triad in root position. So usually 5/4/2 goes to 1/6, but because we have a double passing tone going on here in the bass, we are expecting, we would expect 1/6, but we get 1 instead. Then we get A, D, A, and E. I think this D is a 4/3 suspension or an accented non-chord tone over the bass. This is a neighbor tone over here in the alto, and really what's being implied is A, C sharp, A, and E, which is a 5 chord, passing 7th in the alto. And then we get this chord here, A sharp, C sharp, F sharp, and F sharp, with a passing 7th in the melody. That's F sharp major in first inversion, which is 5/6 of 6 again, as we saw here. And then we have our 6th chord afterwards, B minor, B, B, F sharp, and D. and I think this is where we modulate. B minor is our common chord. We've modulated by this point. We have a little, I think it's called an escape tone, not 100% sure. But now we're looking for a perfect authentic cadence in the key of B minor. So we have E, B, G, and C sharp. That's C sharp minor 7 flat 5 over E, which is 2-6-5, and we all know Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. Passing tone in the alto, we have F sharp, A sharp, E, and C sharp. That F is a chord tone, so no need to mark it. This is a 5-7 chord, F sharp 7. And then we cadence on 1, B minor. Okay, moving ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A major. Bach often goes from a minor key to the flat 7, which is pretty cool. I think we're straight ahead with this G sharp right here going to A natural. I think we're already thinking in terms of A major, so we'll call this B minor chord our 2. And then we go to C sharp, G sharp, E, and E. I think this G sharp is an accented non-chord tone. It's really just functioning like a leading tone. You might hear this as 3, but I really think what's happening here is 1-6. Yeah. Then we have G sharp, B, E, and E. That is E major over G sharp, which is a 5-6 chord. And that turns into a root position on beat 1 and. We have F sharp, A, E, and D. So that's kind of an interesting chord. There's kind of a little bit of a 7, not a 7 chord, a 4-6 chord going on here, even though we have this E right here, which is a suspension and a non-chord tone, but I think the 4-6 is happening there. And then we get G sharp, B, E, and D again, so that introduces another 5-6 chord, but more specifically it's 5-6-5 because of the fact that it's a 7 chord now. Same triad, same inversion, different structure. It's a tetrachord rather than a trichord. Then we have A, C sharp, E, and C sharp, which is a root position A major triad with some passing tones in the lower voices. We then have F sharp, A, and D. That's a root position, a first inversion D major triad, so 4-6. Passing tones in the outer voices this time. Then we have D, F sharp, A, and B. It's a B minor 7 chord over D, which is 2-6-5. And because we're getting ready for a cadence, Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. We get E, E, G sharp, and B. It's a 5 chord, passing 7th in the tenor. And then we cadence on A major, which is our tonic. Okay, we have another one of these interesting cadences, and this is the first time we've seen it in this chorale, so it's not another one locally to this video, but another interesting cadence in the grand scheme of the chorales that I've looked at so far. We have a cadence that sounds like it's an abrupt shift to the subdominant, so I think we modulate to the key of D major here, and this A major is our 5, but we cadence on the 4. However, because we don't really have language for that, or at least there's no language that I'm aware of for that, it sounds kind of like an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of G major, but we'll see once we get there. A, C sharp, E, and A, that is another 5 chord, passing tones in the lower voices. F sharp, A, D, and D, that is a first inversion D major chord, which is 1-6, passing tone in the alto. G, D, F sharp, and D. This is not a G again, this is a B. B, D, F sharp, and D. So we have a similar progression to the beginning of the chorale when we saw it in D. We have a tonic triad going to a 6 chord, passing 7th in the bass. And then we have G, D, B, and D with a neighbor tone in the bass. That is a 4 chord next in root position, G major. And then we have G, D, B, and E. That is an E minor 7 chord over G, so 2-6-5. That turns into root position over here. However, it's not a complete root position 7 chord. We have E, D, B, and E. So that would just be 7 and 5. So this would be a thirdless chord. So this is just 7-5 in the figured bass. Not super significant, but I'll put it there because I've been doing the same thing with, like 5-6 going to 5 in root position, for example. Okay, next we have A, C sharp, A, and E. We would expect 2-5 to go to 5. A major, which is our dominant. Passing tone in the bass, neighbor tone in the tenor. We then have F sharp, F sharp, C sharp, A, and E. That is an F sharp minor 7 chord in root position, which is 3-7. Passing 7th in the bass, no need to mark that because it's a chord tone actually. So 5 going to 3, a bit of a deceptive progression. Bach does that from time to time. But interestingly, afterwards we go to a D major chord, D, F sharp, A, and F sharp, which is a root position D major triad. It's kind of interesting to see the 3 chord interrupt the 5 going to the 1. That's definitely not normal. 3 would usually go off to 6, and then we would, 6, 2, 5, 1, but we go to 1 here. But he's preparing for a cadence on G major where G is supposed to feel like the final object, so maybe that has something to do with it. Neighbor tone in the bass. We then have D, A, and E. I think actually this D is an accented non-chord tone, and really this is C sharp, A, and E, which is A major over C sharp, which is 5-6. And then we have D, A, and F sharp, which is our tonic triad in root position. And I think here's where we get a very brief modulation to the key of G major, which is 5 going to 1. And I'll talk about, actually, we're almost there. However, the 5 chord kind of gets turned into a 5-6 chord here on beat 3 and, just because of the fact that we get D going to F sharp going to G. So it really makes the G feel like the object of arrival. But the reason why the move to G is somewhat significant is because if we look ahead to the next cadence, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of E minor. So moving to G would be, it would be logical because of the fact that G shares a key signature with E and shares mostly the same notes. So bringing E into the mix and then treating that G like a relative major to E minor is probably what's going on here. I think that's a successful analytical strategy. So this G major chord here, G, B, G, and D, let's just call it 3 in the key of E minor. Might as well. Bach modulates using 3 from time to time. It's definitely not the most common chord, but we do see it. We then have E, B, and G. That's our tonic triad in root position, E minor. It's kind of the equivalent of like 1 going to 6, 3 going to 1. They're related to each other by 2 notes. They have 2 notes in common, G and B. So 1 going to the next doesn't really feel like a very weighted, or it doesn't really feel like a very impactful chord progression. It's almost like we're prolonging the same chord over 2 beats. We have F sharp, E, A, and G, but I think what's going on here is this F sharp and this A. Those are both accented non-chord tones, and really we have G, E, G, and G. I really just think that he's just inverting the chord here. And then we get C natural, A, E, C natural, and G, which would be a 4-7 chord in root position with some passing tones or just some non-chord tones. I don't remember what the next page looks like. We have B going down to A and B going up to C. So yeah, so those are both passing tones. 4-7 going to B, E, B, and G. So it's kind of like a passing 1-6-4, but not super impactful to the overall chord progression, just something that we could talk about in passing. C, E, A, and F sharp. That is F sharp minor 7 flat 5 over C, which is 2-4-3, interestingly enough. And I think what's even more interesting than that is the fact that we get A, E, C natural, and F sharp on the next beat. This 2-4-3 chord gets turned into a 6-5 chord, which is what we would expect in a cadential situation in most cases. And then of course we cadence with a 5 chord, B, D sharp, B, and F sharp with a passing 7th in the alto. And that's in root position. And then we cadence on E minor. Perfect authentic cadence because the tonic is in the melody. All right, moving ahead, we have another imperfect authentic cadence in the key of G. However, this one feels a little bit different than the one we looked at previously. So if you see here where we went from A major to D major and got the G right at the end, and the reason why G really felt like it felt like a modulation at the end is because I don't even really think like we modulated. It really just feels more like in the key of D major we go from 1 to 4. But similarly to the fact that we modulate to D to go to G, we have another phrase here where we go to G via D from the key of E minor, which kind of uproots my argument about the idea of needing G to get to E minor. The fact that Bach is going to go to the key of D major, and we're going to treat this E minor like 2, to just go back to G major at the end is very interesting. So after this E minor chord, we have A, C sharp, A, and E, and that's a 5 chord. So we have a normative progression here in the key of D major, 2 going to 5. And then we have D, D, A, and F sharp, our tonic triad, D major, passing 7th in the bass, B, D, B, and F sharp, another 1 going to 6 progression with the passing 7th in the bass, G, D, B, and F sharp. That's another 4-7 chord. We've seen this progression before, right? 5 going to 1, going to 6, going to 4. Let's see if it continues along that path. Here we have another passing 7th in the bass. We have E, G, B, and G. That's an E minor triad in root position, so 2, so the progression is still holding strong. We get this D up here, which is leaping up a 7th from the bass. That's kind of hard to sing, but it is a non-chord tone, kind of turns it into a G major chord in second inversion, or a rootless E minor 7 chord in third inversion, but it doesn't really, it's happening so over such a short period of time, it's really not a huge deal. But then we get C, E, A, and it's C natural here, which is interesting. And I think that around this point, we're getting the modulation. And in fact, I think this E minor might be the point where we modulate to G. We'll call this 6 right here, because C, E, A, and G would be a 2-6-5 chord. And that's where 6 wants to go. So it's really nice that makes sense that way. We have some non-chord tones here. Actually, this G is a chord tone, so I'm going to erase that. Just a habit at this point to mark passing tones that aren't on the downbeat, or, non-downbeat 8th notes as non-chord tones. But then we have A, E, C, and G. That's another A minor 7 chord. So this A minor 7 over C here is just turning into root position 7-5-3, and it is a complete chord. We have the A, the E, the C, and the G, with some passing tones in the alto and the bass. We then have F sharp, E, A, and C sharp, A, F sharp, E, A, and E, and depending on how you hear this, I'm going to go ahead and call this in the key of G major, that would be, sorry, I'm having some brain fog, that would be F sharp minor 7 flat 5 without the 5. It's kind of a weak, let's see, G, E, G, and A. That's not really a chord that we can analyze. Here we have F sharp, E, A, and A. And here we have F sharp, D, and A. You know what I think? I think this E is a suspension, and this is actually just 5-6. This E is just a 7-6 suspension that doesn't get resolved until beat 2. I think that's ultimately what's happening here. Because to say that this is a... Oh, actually, no. I take that back. We're in a major key, so we can have a 5thless 2 chord. So when we have... oh no, but this is F sharp. Yeah, no, I take that back. This is just a 5/6 chord with the E being a 7/6 suspension over the bass. My bad, sorry. We would expect the F sharp to go to G like it does. But yeah, this E is a non-chord tone, and it's clearly suspended from the previous measure. It's like a very deliberate suspension when we get a long tie. Then we have F sharp, D, A, and A. That is another 5 chord in first inversion, so no need to reanalyze. Some passing tones, one of them being delayed in the melody before we get D, D, A, and F sharp with a late 7th and a late 9th even, this passing tone here. So this just takes the chord and puts it in root position before we get a authentic cadence in the key of G major. But the 5th of the chord is in the melody, so no need to reanalyze. Okay, moving along, we have, let's see, a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A. Sorry that the phrase is starting the beginning of the system. That's kind of a formatting problem, but I wanted to keep it on 2 pages, so that's where it had to be to keep things nice and evenly spaced. For an analysis, that's really not the end of the world, but for performance, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. So we go from G major to D major, D, D, A, and F sharp. That's a 5 chord. But this C sharp implies that we're going elsewhere. So I think this 5 chord is going to be our point in which we modulate back to the key of not D major, but A major. And this D chord is now our 4. It's our subdominant. Then we have G sharp here in the bass, G sharp, B, B, and E. That is a first inversion E major triad, which is 5/6. And then it turns into root position on the and of 1. And then we have F sharp, E, B, and D. I think this G sharp here is actually our chord tone of interest. G sharp, E, B, and D would be taking the chord and turning it into 6/5 rather than 5/3, because we now have a D in the mix, which we didn't have before. Now we have A, E, A, and C sharp, 5 going to our tonic, A major, which is good, passing 7th in the bass, F sharp, D, A, and D. That is a first inversion D major triad, 4/6. We have some passing tones, that's E natural, A, and C sharp. Those would both be, this chord would kind of be a passing 1/6/4 chord, but doesn't really contribute all that much. D, F sharp, A, and B. We're getting ready for a cadence here, so this would be B minor 7 over D. That would be 2/6/5 in the key of A major. And then we have E, E, G sharp, and B. We've seen this cadence before in the past. Bach loves his 2/6/5 chords. He goes to 5, E major, passing 7th in the tenor, and then we cadence on 1, A major. Tonic triad. Tonic in the melody as well, so that makes it a perfect authentic cadence. Alright, moving along, we have what I hear as a half cadence. Now notice how we have A major triads, 1 here and 1 here, and we have this F natural is a little misleading. I think this F natural should be an E sharp. It's just the MIDI got programmed incorrectly. But we have G sharps pretty much all throughout. We even have D sharp here and F sharp. And G sharp even as close to the cadence as here, and we don't get any other G's in the next measure. So this just sounds like a half cadence to me, so I'm going to analyze it as such. But let's keep it going. So we have A, C sharp, E, and A. Same difference, it's still a tonic triad, passing 7th in the bass. F sharp, C sharp, A, and F sharp, C sharp, A, and D. That is a D major triad in first inversion, which is 4/6. We then have E, G sharp, C sharp, and D. Yeah, that's not really analyzable. So these two neighbor tones are non-chord tones. So next we'll go to F sharp, D, A, and D. That's just another 4/6 chord. Then we have some non-chord tones here. We have G sharp, B, D, and D. That would be G sharp diminished. So it's kind of like a passing 7 chord before we go to our tonic A major. A, E, and C sharp. So that's a normal progression, 4 going to 7 going to 1. And then we get a very interesting harmony. We have D sharp, A, F sharp, and B. That would be B7 over D sharp, which is 5, 6, 5 of 2. Oh, sorry, of 5. This is a substitute for 2. This is B7. And then this C sharp is a neighbor tone. And then instead of going to where we expect it to, it gets avoided. We have D sharp, G sharp, C sharp, and B. However, I think this E sharp, I know it's notated as F natural, but that's just how the MIDI did it. This is an E sharp. So E sharp, G sharp, C sharp, and B sharp. That would be C sharp 7 over E sharp, and that would be 5, 6, 5 of 6, because C sharp is the dominant of F sharp, which is our 6, and that's where it goes to. So it's almost like we're missing a chord here. We would expect it to go to 5, but we never get a deliberate 5. But here we have F sharp, A, C sharp, and A. It's a root position F sharp major triad, and that's our 6 chord that we're going to. It's almost like we have a 4, 5, 6 progression in the key of F sharp minor, right? Because B7 would be a harmonization of the F sharp melodic minor scale. Then we have E, A, D, E, A, D natural. Interesting cross relationship. And A, but that's not really analyzable. Next we have C sharp, A, E, and E. That would be our tonic triad in first inversion, A major over C sharp. But I think this is where we modulate back to the key of D. This is just what it sounds like to me. It sounds more like a half cadence rather than a plagal cadence in the key of A major. So we'll call this A major triad 5. Then we have D natural, D, A, and F sharp, which is our tonic in root position. And then we get A, C sharp, A, and E, which is our dominant 5. Okay, next we are looking ahead towards our last phrase, almost there, which is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of D. And because we've already modulated to the key of D, we don't need to look for any modulation points or common chords. Here we have D, D, A, and F sharp, which is our tonic, passing 7th in the bass, B, D, B, and G, which is a G major triad in first inversion. So instead of getting a 6 chord like we have been in the key of D major, like 1 going to 6, we have 1 going to 4, 6, and the difference between 4 and 6 is just 1 note because they're a third apart. Neighbor tone here in the bass, B, D, A, and F sharp. That is a B minor 7 chord in root position, so that would be 6, 7. So looks like we are, wait, is that right? Yeah, B, D, A, and F sharp. So 4 going to 6, kind of unusual. Then we have 6 going to 1 almost, D, D, A, and F sharp in root position. So I'll mark that there. Actually, I'm not going to include that. It's not super contributing. It's like when we have 4, 6, and 1 all close to one another, they share notes in common. So whether or not a progression is really happening is kind of up in the air because the chords aren't super different. Next we have C sharp, A, G, and E. That is an A7 chord over C sharp, which is 5, 6, 5. And then that turns into 4, 3 on this beat here because we get the E in the bass, which is the 5th of the chord. And then we have D, D, F sharp, and F sharp, which is a root position tonic triad with a doubled third and a doubled root, no 5th. A little bit of an escape tone going on here with the G and the melody. Then we have A, D, G, and E, but this D is a 4-3 suspension over the bass, and this is just implying 5, 7. Oh, so sorry. Totally not right. We don't have A in the bass yet. This is G, D, G, and E. That is a E minor 7 chord without the 5th. That would be 2, 6, 5. Passing tone here in the alto before we go to our 5 chord. A, C sharp, E, and E. 5. A major root position. And then of course we cadence on our tonic D major here, which is 1. So all in all, we had a very long chorale today. We had some super interesting progressions with the 1 going to 6. That was something that stayed consistent with that, throughout in the key of D major. So I reckon that Bach probably knew this melody very well, and in this melody he knew of the progression that occurred naturally. So the fact that he referenced it a lot in the key of D major is probably a reflection of his comfort with the melody, and probably the historical usage of the melody and how he experienced it in, I don't know, probably in a mass context, or like in a ceremonial context, like as part of the service. But that being said, I'll leave you all with that one. There's a lot to deconstruct, and I can comment on a ton of things, but we went into great detail in this analysis. So we visited a ton of keys. We pretty much visited every key in the key of D major except for F sharp, which is kind of interesting as well. I'll leave you all with that. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you so much for continuing to support the channel. I really look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.